The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch UK Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised.
You're listening to Parasearch UK Radio, news, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio.
Good evening. You're listening to Parasearch UK Radio. I'm Kerry Greenaway and we have got a really special treat for you tonight because I'm joined in the studio by a very special guest, the Reverend John Polk. Welcome, John.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show.
Oh no, you're very, very welcome. I'm very blessed to be able to call you one of my friends.
And likewise.
Oh, you're so sweet. Now, John, give us a little bit of your background so everybody knows what you do. Because you're a ufologist and an abductee helpee and stuff like that, aren't you?
I am, since I was a kid. So, my name is Reverend John M. Polk. I'm an International Metaphysical Minister. I'm a Reiki Master Instructor. I'm a medium. I've been an abductee since I was a child. My house is totally haunted as it has been built on an Indian reservation, so there's daily hauntings in my house, but they're not negative hauntings. They're just mostly imprints that are left over from a past epoch, back when Native American Indians lived all throughout Central Florida, where I live now. And not just my house, but my whole neighborhood is basically haunted from being built on top of this old Indian reservation.
And you're not just that, you're also a broadcaster in your own right, aren't you?
Yeah, I have a bachelor's in broadcasting from Concord College. And I used to work in TV and radio for a number of years. I used to have my own audio-video production company where we made commercials, we made infomercials. I was mostly the talent and the writer for all the copy. And I had a production partner who did all the production. And that went really well for a number of years. And I do entertainment in the Disney area here in Orlando, Florida, currently also.
You're a man of many, many talents.
Well, thank you. You know, it's good to be well-rounded.
Now, you've just been to a convention, haven't you? Can you tell me about that, please?
Yeah, I went to the 2017 UFO Congress in Fountain Hills, Arizona, which is just outside of Phoenix, Arizona, and it was a brilliant time. It was very different for me because it was the first time I didn't watch any of the speakers. I basically stayed in the vendor room, which is adjacent to the speakers' conference room, but a total universe apart, even though the two rooms are adjacent to each other. I have two books. I sent you the e-books, I believe, yesterday.
Yeah,
Yahweh.
Thank you so much for that, because I can't wait to read them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yahweh, the Biblical God as an Alien, and The Blue Beings, Visitation at the UFO Conference. And what really surprised me is that both books sold very well. But what surprised me, a couple things surprised me. At the UFO Congress, the majority of the attendees were considerably older than me. I'm 47 years old. Most of the attendees were well into their 50s, 60s, and 70s. And that kind of surprised me. Also, the Yahweh book sold better than the Blue Beings book, and the majority of the people that bought the Yahweh book were older people, and the majority of the people that bought the Blue Beings book were younger people. So it's kind of like a case study into, what would interest certain individuals based on certain, demographics, age, etc. So I found that interesting, and the best part for the conference for me was being able to meet so many people. One of my producers, his name is Eric Johnson, he was there, and it was great to have him there. We actually did my show on Wednesday of last week from the vendor room at my table where I was selling books. And a guy named Brian, that's not his name, it's really his pseudonym, but he's a Jicarilla Apache Indian. He was able to chime in on the show, and a number of other people were there. David Hatcher Childress of Ancient Aliens was there. William Branley, Gods of Eden, who's also been on Ancient Aliens, he was there. Alejandro Rojas was the MC. He did a magnificent job. Patty Greer won the Film Festival Award for all her films that she made, and she was telling us how she's been doing this for decades, and she's never made a dime doing it, and she was promised a lot of things, and she'd been hacked multiple times. Website, all of her social media accounts were hacked. Anyway, she was interesting to talk with and listen to speak. Dynamic speaker she was. And then Yvonne Smith conducted the experiencer groups, and that was one of my favorite parts, going to the experiencer groups, listening to experiencers talk about their abductions, their close encounters, their UFO sightings. That was incredibly stimulating. And, of course, every time I went to an experiencer meeting, I had to get up and tell my experiences as well.
Well, that's part of what you do, isn't it? You get involved and help other people who have had experiences themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I live a life of service. Yeah, I sold a bunch of books, but that wasn't important. You know, I mean, of course it's important, but it really wasn't. The most important thing was reaching out and meeting new people. And people listen to these shows. You know, of course your show, but shows I'm on with people from all over the country and all over the world. And people will start to feel like they can reach out and communicate with me. So it's very common for experiencers, I've never heard of them before, to just find me, and often they'll email me and tell me of their experiences, and then I'll want to call them via phone and just have a conversation with them and let them know that they're not alone, that they're not unique either, that, you know, there's people all over the world that are experiencers, and that I'm not a counselor. I'm here to listen, and I'm here to lend an ear and help if I can.
And like you say, when you find somebody who's had a similar experience to yourself, it makes it a little bit better and a little bit easier to deal with, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I'm very consciously aware of what's going on, but a lot of people who are going through these experiences, they're not. They don't know what's wrong, and there's not necessarily anything wrong, but it makes them more comfortable to know that somebody can relate with what's happening to them. Somebody can talk to them about what's happening to them because it's happening to me also. Mm-hmm. And you kind of create a sacred fraternity and or a family kind of environment feeling between people. Here's an example. A guy, I'll leave him nameless, he was paranoid out of his mind to talk about this, but he was almost suicidal over what was happening to him. And God forbid anything happens, but I believe I talked him out of it and talked him down from that punishment that he was placing upon himself. So, you know, talk about a life of service. If I can help another human being, then my job is done.
And it's always good, isn't it, to help other people? It's one of the best things about the work you do. And I work with crystals, as you know, and that's part of what I like to do about it, is the helping people. Now, with the people who have experiences, are the majority of them positive?
Yes, and that's a good point that you bring up. Yesterday, I kind of got a big surprise dropped in my lap. Janet and Sasha Lesson out of Hawaii. I'm with them on Aquarian Radio every Friday. But they're on KCOR out of Las Vegas, and they have a show called Divine Paradigm. And I got my signals crossed, but I was supposed to be their fill-in host for Mary Rodwell, who's out of Australia. And she's actually the co-founder of Dr. Edgar Mitchell's FREE, the Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters. And out of nowhere, I'm interviewing this lady, and I've interviewed her before, so it was fun and easy to interview her. But one thing that FREE has done has they've done the most comprehensive research study on experiencers in world history. They've had thousands and thousands of experiencers from all over the country and all over the world do this 4-phase study. I've done the first 2 phases. Everybody remains anonymous. But the point is that the research findings were kind of surprising to myself and other people, that 85% plus of all experiencers are having positive experiences. And that actually surprised me. Ray Hernandez, who's also a co-founder of Dr. Edgar Mitchell's Free, I interviewed him on my show a couple months ago. And the whole 2 hours, he went over all the statistics that corroborated the statement that I just laid out, that the majority of experiencers are having positive experiences, even with the reptilians, even with the grays. It breaks it down into pie charts so that it's easy to understand. And that was a big surprise, that 80 to 85+% of all experiencers are having positive experiences.
Well, that's fantastic, because most of the media that gets reported in the mainstream, they come across as being pretty terrifying.
Oh, absolutely. And movies also. You know, there are rarely to know positive alien movies out there. Besides E.T., the extraterrestrial, which goes back to like the 70s or early 80s. Most of these movies are not positive, and it taints the whole condition, if you will, with extraterrestrials. It's hyperbolized, it's sensationalized, and people that don't really know a whole lot about it are just going to assume that all aliens are out to kill us, and that's far from the truth.
Why do you think that is?
It's fake news, in effect, disinformation act. Why? I believe that, the powers that be want us to be in fear of ET, also because they don't want disclosure. And they don't want disclosure because, number one, we'll all know that all our world governments have been lying to us about this forever. And then if we knew that, then we'll know that we can't really trust them either. So there's a lot of reasons at play. I can't be positive about all of them, but I do believe that our governments do not want disclosure. And by all these negative movies about extraterrestrials, I think it safeguards them against we human beings actually wanting disclosure.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Now, let's talk about your first book, which covers really the ancient alien theory, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yahweh, the biblical God, is an alien. Mm-hmm. So I'm at the conference, and people want you to explain why they should buy your book. I have a name kind of out there in internet radio, but not so much at the conferences selling books. So I was really put to the test. I remember a couple ordained ministers approached me, and they were, asking me intelligent questions, and they were wanting to know where I was coming from. Some of them looked and acted like I was a blasphemer, and others actually wrote their own book about what I wrote about also. Oh. I ran into a former Pentecostal minister of 20 years who then became a police officer. And I think I had gone to the bathroom or something, and I came back, and this guy is standing at my table and says, "Are you Reverend John Polk?" I'm like, yeah, absolutely. How are you? And da-da-da-da. And he tells me a story about being a Pentecostal minister. And he said, the more I started to read it, the Old Testament more specifically, he realized, is this really God? God killed everybody? So let's go through some of the scriptures. Exodus 11, God killed the firstborn Egyptian sons. He killed Ramses' 2-month-old baby. Is that God? Noah's flood. He flooded the earth, killed everybody. Sodom and Gomorrah killed everybody in both of those cities. Genesis 6, the sons of the gods descended to earth and mated with the daughters of men. The sons of the gods, plural, so now there's more than one God. Yeah. Also descended from, so this was the fallen angels. How can angels have sex? It's not possible. They're ethereal spirit beings, and yet they can They can copulate with human beings and create human beings. To me, those are human-alien hybrids that descended upon Mount Hermon. They're also known as the Watchers. And so I'm reciting these different scriptures to these ordained ministers, and they could not argue with me. A couple of them had something nasty to say before they walked away, and I just told them, hey, I love you. I hope you enjoyed the conference.
That winds them up probably more than anything else.
Oh, I mean, what am I going to do, fight with them? I don't need to do that. I'm not going to lose my composure just because somebody doesn't agree with me.
No, there's no point to it. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, and it's just how much you educate yourself on each subject, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So did I let those confrontations, and one of them got kind of confrontational. I didn't let it bother me at all. Actually, I found it stimulating. And I challenged him as tactfully as possible to let's talk about it on my radio show. And I did not have any takers. Nobody wanted to talk ancient aliens versus the Bible.
Strange that. So your book, Yari, goes into that, doesn't it? It covers all of that.
It does. And one thing that I would do if somebody showed some kind of interest in the book, I would say, besides control, why would a alien creator God come to this planet and establish religion besides control? And some people they weren't really sure what to say. And I said, this is why. Because we pray to them. Imagine you're a creator God alien, you descend to this planet, you either create life on this planet, you either interbreed with current life on this planet, you either alter the DNA of the existing hominids, more specifically Neanderthal man, and combine it with your own DNA, and or you colonize the planet with your own species. It's the same story all across the world in every single culture. But the number one reason that they establish religion is so that we will pray to them. So in effect, we're praying to extraterrestrials, and we don't even realize it. Now, what do they gain out of it? They gain our prayer energy. There's power in prayer. Anybody that prays knows that there is power in prayer, and you can actually feel it. I've actually, I've witnessed prayer work in my life because it does work. Doesn't work every time, but it does work. So if I'm an alien creator God, I have potentially billions of people on this planet praying to me, thinking that I am God. However, I'm just an extraterrestrial that's taking advantage of the situation. And that started to sink in with a lot of the people that I talk to. There's such a device called an electroscope. If you fly over a church on Sunday, the electroscope will spike. If you fly over the church on a Tuesday morning, the electroscope won't do anything because there's nobody in there praying to you. So there is power in prayer, and alien creator gods know how to harness it and extrapolate it and use it supernaturally to benefit themselves.
I agree. I know of an experiment that was done regarding the power of it's more positive thinking and praying to a specific object, and it was plants. And they took a plant, and one was prayed to and, talked positively to, and, that faith of you're going to grow beautiful and you're going to be amazing. And then another plant that had no attention whatsoever, and the plant that had that energy put to it flourished, and the one that didn't actually withered and died. So it's understandable, and you can do that experiment yourself.
Yeah, so even plants have a consciousness. They have emotions and feelings. If you play like death metal music around a plant, more than likely it will die. If you play classical music like Beethoven, Bach, Brahms, etc., the plant will flourish. So is it a sentient being? No, but guess what? It has its own consciousness. It has its own feelings. And in effect, you can translate that into energy. And energy affects us all in each and every way. So we're all susceptible and vulnerable to energy, whether it's positive or negative.
That's it, but it backs up your theory that they're able to access that energy, because you can say we can try these experiments yourself in your own home and see the impact it can have. So it makes sense what you're saying.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. And then also the Egyptians, they theorized that when you die, that your soul splinters into 13 different parts. So let me further my postulation by saying, when we die, if we were raised Christian, a part of our soul, at least a fraction of our soul, will go to Yahweh's false version of heaven, into their own quantum hologram matrix, and cycle through that before they actually go to the godlight and cycle through the real universal God consciousness and come back. But when you pray to these extraterrestrials, especially for your whole lifetime, they're gonna be able to possess a part of your soul, and that's a very old kind of concept that has been taken advantage of by alien creator gods for, perhaps even millions of years on this planet.
That would make them quite powerful.
Yeah, so let's extrapolate that further. Let's say, and I write about this in my Yahweh book, that Yahweh, who in effect is Enlil of the Anunnaki, did not just do what he did on this planet. He's done it on multiple planets. For example, Mars. The Anunnaki were on Mars before they came here. They used it as a way station for their parts, their materials, and their technology. And then there's evidence of Xenon 129 on Mars, which is indicative of a nuclear explosion, which is potentially the reason why the atmosphere was stripped off of Mars, although parts of Mars have lakes on it, and parts of Mars has a atmosphere that you can actually breathe, and a lot of people don't know or understand that. But prior to Mars, the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, that was a planet that was ruled by the Anunnaki also. And then let's go to different parts of the Milky Way. The Anunnaki conquered the Pleiades perhaps millions of years ago. They conquered Cygnus, another constellation, perhaps millions and millions of years ago. They conquered Orion, perhaps millions of years ago. They conquered Sirius, perhaps millions of years ago. So let's say that Yahweh right now has maybe a few hundred or more planets where he has seeded them and created religion. So imagine you're receiving prayer energy not from Christians, just Christians on the earth plane, but from multiple different species of sentient beings on multiple planets throughout the Milky Way galaxy and throughout the omniverse, since there is more than universe. So how many prayers, how much prayer energy, and how many souls are you going to receive from multiple beings on multiple planets simultaneously? And the creator God aliens kind of have like this ego thing going where, well, I have a few 100 billion souls. How many do you have? You only have 50 billion souls, so I'm greater than you. It's amazing when you extrapolate this whole concept to go from them just doing it on Earth to them doing it on many planets simultaneously around the cosmos.
Wow. It's quite an incredible thought, isn't it, really, to think that they're garnering that kind of, energy from, like you say, multiple universes.
Yeah, at the same time. And, so they'll set up religion, and then they'll move on to another planet and do the same thing there. They'll set up religion, culture, a pyramid system, etc., and then they'll move on and do it on another planet. That's their mission. It can be construed as being very selfish because they're deceiving we primitive humans into thinking that they are God, when in effect they're just advanced creator God alien extraterrestrials. But what I have learned through my research is, for the most part, not completely, but for the most part, as long as we do what they asked us to do, as long as we love them and as long as we worship them, they were, for the most part, benevolent to us. But if we defied them, they would kill us.
So, looking at society today, there has been a drop, I would say, in people worshipping in churches and stuff like that. In religion, there has been a slow decline. And obviously I'm mainly talking Catholicism and COV, I would imagine. So that is sort of leading down the road to us sort of going against them a little bit, really.
The religion on earth that is losing the most followers the quickest is Christianity. The religion on earth that is gaining the most followers is Islam.
Okay.
So that's an actual statistical fact. And then the Pope Francis, came to the United States sometime last year, and I think it was a very positive thing that the Pope came to this country. It hadn't done it in a long time, but I believe that it was also a last-ditch effort to try and regain Christian followers. This is interesting, is that between 1975 and 2008, which is 33 years, the Vatican mummified 31 great pontiffs and or priests. And then in 2008, the Vatican came out and said the belief in extraterrestrials does not conflict with a belief in God. So think about that. Why would they mummify 31 high priests in 33 years? I mean, the whole concept behind mummification is that they can actually come back and reanimate those bodies. So I don't know the answer to it. I just found it incredibly interesting when I discovered that little nugget of information.
I'm sure we'll find out in time. But it doesn't matter what religion that you pray to. Ultimately, we're all praying to a God, isn't it?
Yeah, correct. And a God implies that there's more than one. I thought there was only one God. Well, there is one God. There is monotheism. There is source. And, going to metaphysics, we call, in the metaphysical realm, we call God the universal God consciousness. And that is the one thing that keeps us all together. That's the one thing that we all have in common. We all have what we call a God self or a soul. And the concept behind your God self or soul is that it's the part that the universal God consciousness lends to us for this particular incarnation in this particular lifetime. So since the universal God consciousness is omnipotent, so is our God self or our soul. So since we have a part of us that is omnipotent, what does omnipotent mean? It means that you're omnipresent, that you exist in all dimensional planes simultaneously. So now let's extrapolate that. If my soul exists in all dimensional planes simultaneously, so in the third dimension where we are right now, I'm a human being. I'm a Homo sapien sapien. In the fourth dimension, let's say I'm a wolf. In the fifth dimension, let's say I'm a Pleiadian. So within my concentric selves, within my own hierarchy of selves, within myself, I am a human in the third density, and I'm an extraterrestrial in a higher density.
Oh, you give me such concepts to ponder.
Oh, here's a good one. So I'm at the experiencer meeting, and I spin a question at the crowd. And I'm like, I have my own answer for it, but I'm just curious what other people will say. So imagine you're on Earth now in 2017, February 22nd. Okay.
Sorry, that was my phone buzzing at me. Sorry, I'm just going to go and turn that off. Carry on talking while I go and turn that off.
Sure. So imagine, you're here today, February 22nd of 2017, and you have a space-time vehicle. You have a time machine. You want to travel back to 1975. So let's say you enter the craft, you leave this planet, you return to Earth in 1975. Did you return to this same Earth in the same physical location in the Milky Way galaxy, but in a different dimension? Or did you end up landing on another Earth in a different part of the cosmos or did you do both at the same time? And that was really hard for people to answer. And what I believe, so no, let's extrapolate that. So let's say you went to 1974, then you went to 1973, then you went to 1972. Is that Earth, this Earth, in the same physical location but in a different dimension? Or is it a different Earth in a different part of the cosmos? And that, it was just a great question. And what I believe it's both. I believe that, there are concentric dimensions that are laying right on top of this dimension that we live in. We're just vibrating at a different, not necessarily higher, but we're vibrating at a different frequency and vibration, which puts us in a different dimension on the Earth plane. Extraterrestrials know how to traverse, some of them know how to traverse their body, mind, spirit by using Gaia, or the Mother Earth spirit, in conjunction with their own, and use the Earth as a portal into another dimension. And this is very common, that there's perhaps even over 1,000 bases on this planet. And some of them, they know how to traverse either the mountains, or they know how to traverse the oceans to actually pass from this dimension into another dimension.
Right, weren't we talking before of these portals, one of them being in, if I remember rightly, correct me if I'm wrong, in Antarctica, or is it?
Well, yeah, they're all over the planet, but there's definitely one in Antarctica. So back in 1947, Admiral Byrd was flying a plane basically right over the center of Antarctica, and he happened upon this huge hole, if you will, and he flew into it. He flew into this hole, and the hole kind of posed as a tractor beam. It pulled him in safely. He literally flew into a hollow Earth where he saw what to us would be UFOs, and he ran into some conscious beings that kind of looked human, although they clearly weren't. He was able to talk to them, and they said that they did not approve of we humans using nuclear weapons, and that they also said that they are the true guardians of this planet and that we are not. And so he returned safely out of the same hole in which he entered, and went to Washington and started talking to the Joint Chiefs, other military leaders, about what he had discovered. And he was basically given a vow of silence. He was told, "You are not to speak of this ever again." So he sat on it, didn't talk about it until right before he passed away.
Oh my word. See, when you start looking at, case studies like that, and, witness statements, and then listening to people that have had experiences, it certainly starts building up a case, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does. So I was at the MUFON Symposium at Disney World in August of last year, and there's a bunch of brilliant speakers, but my favorite was Paula Harris. And she was talking about how France was doing nuclear experimentation in the oceans off of their coasts. And and the extraterrestrials were getting miffed about it because it was messing with their space-time dimensional portal. So literally, extraterrestrials went to the military leaders of France and told them that they will stop testing their nuclear weapons in the waters off the coast of France, and that was the reason why, because it was messing up their ability to teleport and transport themselves through a womb of transformation and transportation within the waters off the coast of France to go into another dimension. So talking about ticking off the ETs with nuclear weapons, that was according to Paula Harris, which did a brilliant job at that conference.
And they did stop.
Yeah, they did. They did. She also talked about bases off of the coast of Italy and off the coast of Sicily. Also, there's multiple bases through all bodies, especially massive bodies of water, all across the planet. And this is a very old phenomenon. From the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean, to Lake Titicaca in Peru, to the Michigan Triangle up in Lake Michigan next to the state of Michigan. And it's interesting that the Michigan Triangle is 3 times smaller than the Bermuda Triangle, which is close to where I live off the coast of Florida, Puerto Rico, and the Bahamas. It's 3 times smaller than the Bermuda Triangle, but has 3 times as much anomalous activity, missing planes, missing ships, etc., which is interesting.
Very much so, because you don't really hear much about that one, yet we all know about the Bermuda Triangle.
And what's interesting also about the Bermuda Triangle is that the second largest trench in the world is off the coast of Puerto Rico, right in the middle of the Bermuda Triangle. What is on the exact opposite side of the Earth? It's the Dragon's Triangle off of the coast of Japan. And it is the largest trench in the world. And I believe that these are both what you could call sipapus, or portals, in the ocean. And it figures that the 2 biggest trenches on Earth are directly opposite of each other on the planet.
Wow. So when you start looking at it, sort of like I say, it kind of builds your case up, and you listen to these things, and these are facts. These things are facts, and you go, oh yeah, never really thought about it like that before. And that's what's so interesting talking to you, because it makes you think about concepts that you haven't put together. They're out there, but you haven't put them together, and you've done that.
Yeah, well, I do a lot of research, just like all of us do, and then I kind of make my own educated guesses as to further the research. Like, for example, the whole creator God aliens are doing this on multiple planets simultaneously. That is nothing that I read in a book. That literally just came to me as a download. And what's interesting, you run into a number of PhDs at these conferences, and at the UFO Congress, this lady, she was a PhD in neuroscience. And she's trying to understand downloads. And I explained it to her the best that I could. It took a long time to try and explain it to her. And one thing that I did say is that not all thoughts that we think are generated by our own minds. Some thoughts that we think are actually placed there by angels and by extraterrestrials. Our brains were created so that they could easily be manipulated by more intelligent species. For example, if you know how to activate the prefrontal cortex in conjunction with the hypothalamus of a human's brain, you can incite behavior. For example, you can make people fight. You can make people copulate. You can make people love each other. You can make people hate each other. You can make people speak freely and open. You can make people completely silence themselves, all through a wave process called ELF. Also, our pineal or pineal gland is easily remotely activated by extraterrestrials and by our Black Ops government. And this technology is very, very old. What I'm talking about, they were experimenting with lab rats with their prefrontal cortex and their hypothalamus to incite behavior. And they figured out through waves that they could do it. And it was a very easy technology that is completely hidden from us, and something our government definitely does not want to talk about.
I can understand why, because that could be used as a weapon as well, couldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So before I went to the UFO Congress, maybe 2 weeks before that, and I saw a UFO from my backyard, and there were drones, and this is very common, very, very low flying drones, 2 of them. One flying from east to west and one flying from north to south. So when the one from east to west was over my house, the one from north to south would be further away. And then when the one from north to south was over my house, the one from east to west would be further away, so that they wouldn't collide into each other. But they were definitely flying over my house. And so I go to get my camera to document what's happening, and I get frozen. This happens to me so much. I'll go get my camera, and they do something to me. And I was posing this question to one of my producers named Eric Johnson, and I said, they're shooting some kind of wave or particle beam at me. And he said, well, maybe they're doing it telepathically. And I said, you know what? I can't rule that out. They're doing something to me. And I've talked to a number of other experiencers who have UFO sightings in and around their home, and they'll tell you the same thing, that they get shot with something, whatever it is, and it's invisible. You can't see what it is, but it can render you motionless in a state of paralysis. Although I'm getting better about fighting it off. A long time ago, it would happen to me, and I would just black out and forget everything. Anymore, I still have my faculties about me. I just can't necessarily move. Like one time I was sitting in what I call my captain's chair in my backyard. I see a UFO. I go to go get my camera. I can move every part of my body. I'm totally conscious and cognizant of what's going on, but I could not lift my butt out of the chair. My bum was stuck in the chair, but I could move every other part of my body. The second that the UFO was gone, and no chance of getting it on video, I was able to get up. So what are they doing? Are they shooting some wave or beam at me, or are they manipulating my prefrontal cortex and my hypothalamus, my pineal gland? Can't be exactly sure, but they're definitely doing something, and they're doing it on purpose.
Well, this leads us very nicely onto your latest book, because this is based on an experience you had at another conference, isn't it?
Yeah, the Blue Beings Visitation at the UFO conference. Pardon me. And there was 20 plus witnesses to this account. And I can tell you this story briefly. It's August 28th of 2015 at the Experiencers Speak 4 conference in Portland, Maine, put on by Audrey Starborn Hewins and her family at the Fireside Inn. And I'm the opening speaker. And Audrey asked me to be the opening speaker because she knew I would take a spiritual approach to it. So the cool thing about Experiencers Speak is 80-90+% of everybody there is an experiencer. So anywhere from I thought I saw UFO to I get abducted all the time. Anything in between is an experiencer. And so I have all the experiencers hold hands. Let's everybody hold hands and basically do a seance to see if we can summon the gods. And I do, the God light surrounding each one of us individually, then the God light surrounding us all collectively, and then I did a chimney sweep of our chakras, going all the way from our crown chakra all the way down through our root. But the root is not correct term, because actually your root is in your feet, and then your feet going into Middle Earth and actually extracting part of the earth energy, and then have the earth energy come back up through your feet all the way through all your chakras out the top of your crown, going back up into the cosmos. Now that we're protected and we've done the chimney sweep of our chakras, let's now invite loving and benevolent angels, extra-dimensionals, ultra-terrestrials, and extraterrestrials to join us in our congregation. And then I say, I can see E.T., and E.T. is always in the room with us. We just don't know it because they're vibrating at a higher frequency. And I said, my goal before the end of this conference is that somebody who's never achieved contact will achieve contact for the first time, and or somebody that walks in multiple worlds like I do will achieve contact unlike they ever have in their life. So, the first day of the conference expires, all the speakers were brilliant, and then the very next day was the full moon on August 29th, and the very last speaker was the most famous abductee in world history, Travis Walton. And he's pushing his new DVD entitled Travis. So we dimmed the lights because we're about to watch his DVD, and then followed that by a question and answer time period. So right as the lights are starting to dim, 4 beings not of this world walk into the conference room, and they walk up to me. And they have money in their hand, and they say, "Are you the one we pay to see Travis?" And I'm like, "No, let me find Audrey." So I find her twin sister, Debbie, who in turn finds Audrey. And then Audrey's sorting out the money with them, and they didn't understand the money that they had. They didn't understand that, number one, they didn't even have enough money, and they didn't understand the paper monetary currency that we humans use. They just didn't understand it. So Audrey is like, "Here, just give me 4 of those, and you can come in. And it's funny because there was a female and a male, both of which had blue skin, and they were basically arguing with each other because they weren't sure what to do. They knew the money was important, but they weren't sure what to do until Audrey just took the money and said, you're okay, you can come in. So after they did that, Audrey had pulled them into the light to see their money, and she noticed that 2 of them had blue skin. One of them, we'll call him Don. He said his name was Don. He said his name was Don because we wouldn't be able to pronounce his real name. And I don't even think that Don had a name. I think he had a vibration frequency, which advanced extraterrestrials, that is their name. Their vibration frequency is their name. So if your currency is consciousness, you don't understand primitive paper currency. It doesn't make sense to you. So anyway, they walk up to Travis at this point. And they start talking to Travis. Hey, Travis, we came here to see you. And Travis said something to the effect, well, how are you enjoying the conference? And they said, basically, we just got here. They pick up his book, pick up his DVD, ask him a few questions. And then Audrey did this. She was looking for telltale signs of paint. You know, when 2 beings walk into a conference room at a UFO conference and 2 of them have blue skin, you know, that should raise a few red flags. And, of course, you want to try and apply science to everything first.
Yeah.
So she's looking at the crow's feet around their eyes to see if she can see, when your face contorts, any kind of facial gesture, the wrinkles will make paint crack if you have your face painted. She was looking for that, could not see any signs of cracked paint on their faces. Then she was looking at their arms, looking at their hair follicles, to see if there was any gathering of paint in and around the hair coming out of the hair follicle, which is very common if you paint yourself with paint. She couldn't see any telltale signs of body art, in other words. And so let me go back and spin a disclaimer out there. Is everything that I just said about Travis Walton, Travis does not want his name attached to this story at all. I've had people close to me try to talk to him about it, and he will not talk about it. And I respect him for it. He doesn't want to talk about it. I can only speculate as to why. I think because he just doesn't want to go through all the scrutiny that he went through before, back in the 70s. So that would be my best educated guess. So everything I say that Travis did and everything I say that Travis said was from Audrey. She was on a couple shows with me talking about it. So in my book, I go and transcribe every single word that she said and put it in my book verbatim, even uhs and, and any kind of little pause or anything I possibly could to keep it as completely accurate as possible. So anyway, we the blue beings and then the other 2 with them, they sit down pretty much right in front of me, and then we watch the DVD. Travis does his Q&A for probably 45 minutes or so, and then after the conference was over, the beings, they get up out of their chair and they walk up to me. There was 150 people at the conferences at this point. They could have walked up to anybody. They walked up to me, and Don started talking to me. And I don't want to go into great detail what we talked about because, of course, I want you to find out about it in the book. But then,
too right.
But then a group of people, probably upwards of over 20, started to surround us, and they started asking Don questions. One of the questions was, your skin is blue. Are you from the Pleiades? And this question was asked by former Psychic of the Year, Keith Andrews. And he said, yes, I'm Pleiadian. I'm a shifter and I'm a healer. And then ultimately, Keith and his wife were hugging Don. And some other questions were answered or asked by other people. And then, so imagine this. I'm standing right next to Don the whole time. I mean, I shook his hand at one point. I put my hand on his shoulder, which I do when I talk to people. I'm a toucher. Nothing inappropriate, but, touch people on their arm, touch their hand, touch their shoulder, just to, that's just the way I've always been. And I felt some kind of tingling, shaking Don's hand as if there was some kind of incredible energy transfer. And then I can remember it took a number of minutes before it started to soak in that I was talking to someone or something that was not from this planet. And I can remember looking in Don's eyes and him looking back at me And I knew the second that he knew that I knew that he was an extraterrestrial. And right around that time, I froze and I black out with my phone in my hand, and I was about to just be rude and just start taking a bunch of pictures of him, and I froze. Now, another guy named Ron Sharfy, who was doing the videography, that's what he was there to do, was the videography. He froze, and he had the $5,000 digital camera. He froze. A number of us completely froze and forgot what we were doing. How do you forget to take a picture of a blue extraterrestrial that's standing next to you at a UFO conference? I mean, how is that even possible? I call it alien anesthesia. They did the Jedi mind trick on us with alien anesthesia, and basically just kind of blanked us, wiped our slate. And then this is interesting also, is that after Audrey, she knew what she ran into, and she said after she had her exchange with the blue beings that she forgot about it completely until the next day. She said nobody even brought it up to her that day. And it's like, how is that even possible? You run into an extraterrestrial at your own conference and you forget till the next day. They did the Jedi mind trick on all of us. Because, number one, because we would have all taken pictures of them, and they did not want that to happen.
I mean, just want to remind everybody that this didn't just happen to one or two people. This happened to a group of 20 plus people at the same time at the same conference.
Yeah, it did. It did. Now, here's sweet vindication for me. I've had a lot of people tell me I'm just lying about it, just trying to sell books. And granted, it's not an easy story to believe, but it did happen. So I'm at the experiencers meeting, which is an open forum for experiencers to just talk. And this is at the UFO Congress. I think they did like 6 of them, one in the morning and one in the evening around 7 or 8 o'clock before dinner time. And they were great. I enjoyed them very thoroughly, and I absolutely blew everybody's mind every time I went to one, because I'm always one to get up and speak. But I was talking about the blue beings at the conference, and this guy from the UK, his name is Lee Hazel, he jumped in and corroborated my story, and that made me feel so good that somebody that was actually there, that was actually a witness, jumped in to tell everybody in the crowd that, yes, Reverend Polk is not making this up, that he was there, and that he saw them also. So, talk about something that makes you feel really, really good. So when I first started telling the blue being story, I'm looking at the crowd, probably about 80 people in this room. About half of them, I can tell they're entertaining the dialogue and they're believing me, and I can tell the other half just thought I was just full of beans. You know what I'm saying? You could just tell by nonverbal, just looking at their face. But then after Lee Hazel jumped in and corroborated my story, everybody started to believe me. And they started spinning questions at me and Lee Hazel. Then another lady that was there, her name was Sandy Clevin, she jumped in and mentioned the blue beings also. So now I had 2 witnesses to this chime in at this experiencers meeting to corroborate my story. And that made me feel so good. And it definitely led to selling a bunch of books too.
Ah, brilliant. That's always good.
Yeah,
but where can people buy this book? Because I can't wait to read it myself, to be fair. So where can they get hold of your books?
All my assets can be found at johnpolkmedia.com. That's JOHNPOLK media.com. Once again, johnpolkmedia.com. And if anybody wants to contact me directly, you can follow me on Twitter at Reverend Polk or at QH Matrix. So at Reverend Polk, at QH Matrix on Twitter, and Marcus Polk, not John Polk, but Marcus Polk on Facebook is my ET Paranormal identity on Facebook. If anybody wants to further the conversation, I'm always open to do that.
Because like I say, this is your brand new book out, and it is a fascinating tale because, like I'm going to say it again, it wasn't experienced just by you yourself. There was at least 20 people who experienced this. And it is, I can understand why people would be quite sceptical if they've never had any form of ET experience. But if you have, or you believe, or you're interested in this, then definitely get these books because they're absolutely fascinating. fascinating, and they open your mind to concepts that you wouldn't normally come across by somebody who lives this life, who has experiences, who encounters ETs. So definitely go to those sources and get the books. That's what I say on that one, John.
Yeah, I concur.
Yeah, definitely. Now, on the alien thing, there's not just one species, is there? There are several species.
Yeah, and the Mahabharata, which is basically the Bible for people of India and the Hindu faith, in the Mahabharata, it speaks of 400,000 different hominid species of extraterrestrials. Something else that is interesting. There's a manual called Psalm 101, Special Operations Manual 101. And what is the purpose of this manual? The purpose of the manual is to tell you protocol as to what to do in the event that a UFO crashes and or there's occupants on board that either lived or died. There's an actual manual. Clifford Stone, who was what you call an interfacer, he worked for the Army, decades ago, and that was his job, was to interface or telepathically communicate with the extraterrestrials. Fascinating story. If people are not familiar with it, just Google Clifford Stone. There's tons of information about it. But in Psalm 101, they cataloged 28 different species of extraterrestrials, and this is just from downcraft that the Army, happened upon and investigated and cleared the scene, and that's all in Psalm 101. And it's very interesting that they catalog 28 different species of extraterrestrials.
So why do they come to Earth then? If they don't do it like openly and it's all hushed up by the governments, and why do they actually come to Earth? I mean, they can't all be just testing us.
It's a good question. There's a number of reasons they come to Earth. One reason is because this Earth serves as a space-time portal for them to relocate somewhere else. So there are bases all over this planet. For example, there's a base under Archuleta Mesa. There's a base under Mount Shasta up in California. There's bases all throughout the ocean. I was talking about Paula Harris talked about the bases off the coast of France, off the coast of Italy, off the coast of Sicily. There's bases off the coast of Cuba. There's bases off the coast of Puerto Rico. There's bases all over the world. There's bases all throughout the mountains of the desert Southwest, which are, I was telling you the term Sipapu, which means it's a portal. If you just dig a hole in the mountains and you're a scientist, you're just going to dig into a bunch of rocks. But if you're very spiritual, you can use the earth energy to traverse your body, mind, spirit, and literally use it as a womb of transformation and transportation to relocate somewhere else. This is interesting. The Maya called the underworld Xibalba. What was the literal translation of Xibalba is not the underworld. It's the Milky Way. They used the Milky Way. They used Xibalba, or the underworld here on this planet, to travel to other parts of the cosmos. Other reasons that extraterrestrials are visiting this planet is for raw materials, gold, diamonds, nuclear materials, iron ores, etc., that they can actually use on their spaceships. They're drawn to fracking. We're drilling for precious minerals, iron ores, etc. There's a lot of geothermal energy that is released through fracking also. Fissures and fault lines, either on the terrestrial plane or underneath the oceans, releases geothermal energy, which I believe they can use as a source of power for their space-time vehicles. They're also drawn to nuclear bases. And what was interesting, Charles Halt with the Rendlesham Forest, that whole incident, he was actually speaking at the conference about the whole Rendlesham Forest. So, there's so many reasons, and I haven't even gotten to DNA genetic experimentation. That's definitely a part of it. Unfortunately, more specifically, women are used as breeders, so that's definitely a part of it. Why did the extraterrestrials come and visit not just me but all those other people at that conference? They did it, in my opinion, as a part of soft disclosure. And then so I meet this guy at the UFO Congress, and I didn't realize this, but when you read my book, the foreword was written by Janet Lesson. I'm with her on Aquarian Radio every Friday. But anyway, she wrote the foreword to my book, and in her foreword to my book, she talked about how Dr. Stephen Greer with the Disclosure Project, he's pretty famous. If people don't know who he is, I would research him. But after he did his presentation in 2013 at the UFO Congress, probably 40 or 50 people saw this huge extraterrestrial. He must have been over 9 feet tall. He was wearing a onesie kind of jumpsuit that was blue and white, but mostly blue. And then he had these two other beings that looked humanoid on either side of him. And so this guy, he wants to remain nameless, he was in front of the conference doors in the hallway as the conference was being let out. Dr. Stephen Greer exited first, and not far behind him was this really tall being with these other two beings on either side of him. And over 40 or 50 people saw that particular extraterrestrial, or those extraterrestrials. And this stuff is not getting the attention that it deserves and that it requires. And I didn't even know about it until I read the foreword in my book that Janet wrote.
It's funny how things come up to you, isn't it, as well? It's like you said before, it's almost like it's a magnet. You're a magnet, and you draw these coincidences and synchronicities to you to do with this subject.
I do, and so this is interesting. There's so many interesting things that happen, but I'm at the conference, and I'm at my vendor table, and I see this cute little older lady. Her name is Costara. I called her Castara, and she's like, no, it's Costara. And I'm like, I am so sorry. Forgive my ignorance. She's like, well, when you mispronounce my name, you send different energy. So please pronounce it correctly. And out of respect for her, I'm like, I'm so sorry. But anyway, she walks into the conference room, and she does not walk through the main door. She walks through a side door. And I'm the first person that she sees. But she's kind of like, almost like dazed and bewildered. She's kind of looking around like she's lost, like she's looking for someone or something, but is not really sure what she's looking for. And what she was looking for me, and I didn't even realize it. So this cute little older lady comes up to me, and she finally fixates on me and sees my lanyard and sees my name, John Polk, and oh, I'm supposed to meet you and talk to you. And I'm like, okay. So I hold her hands, I look in her eyes, and she looks back at me in my eyes. An incredible energy transfer exchange going on right there. And I say, can you feel me? And she said, oh, yes, I can feel you. Both of us holding each other's hands, we felt this incredible tingling sensation. It was definitely a very, very deep connection on a spiritual level. So then she's got this manual, if you will, in a 3-ring binder, with her whole story. Unfortunately, she's on in her years, and heaven forbid she's going to pass. However long she has left on this earth plane, but she has not told her story about the extraterrestrials, and she wants me to be the one to interview her. She was going to interview with a mutual friend of ours, who I'll leave nameless, and something happened every single time that he went to go interview her, and he never interviewed her. So she asked me, she said, do you think that so-and-so was blocked? I'm like, yes. I believe that he was blocked, because I know he wanted to interview you, because when he and I talked, that's all we could talk about was you. Mm-hmm. And I thought that he had already done the interview, and he had not. They were going to do it like 3 Sundays in a row, and they never did it once. So she gave up on him and decided that she wanted to tell her story to me on my show, which I was totally flattered about. And so she was at the experiencer meeting, and she breaks out this chart, if you will, with all these different universal symbols and their meanings. It was very, very interesting, and she passed it around the room. And then after the meeting was over, Yvonne Smith, the lady who conducts it, she left. And then there was probably 10 people surrounding Kostara, and she's telling her story, and every one of them is on the edge of their seat. And I had wanted to talk to her to learn more about her story, and her friend named Joan said, you know what, this happens every time we go anywhere. She's going to be wrapped up for a couple hours. So here's our cards, here's our phone numbers. Please make a deliberate point to communicate with us, because we definitely want to do the show with you. But right in the middle of her going over her manual with me at the conference, this really weird guy comes up and starts pushing his material on us and just being as rude as he could possibly be about it. It was very strange. It was almost like he did it on purpose to distract us from having that open communication with each other. Mm-hmm. And then Kostara, he's like, here, I need to go get some more stuff to bring to you. And Kostara and I are both like, no, we don't want one more piece of your literature. Please, out of respect, just take it back. We don't even want to, talk with you anymore. So she and I start to continue to talk in the vendor room. And then all of a sudden, one of the speakers had just finished, and a few hundred people rush into the vendor room. And we didn't have a chance to speak any further. But right around that time, I could really feel myself connecting with her. And one thing that happens to me when I'm either abducted or I run into somebody who's basically a star, a star light worker, if you will, yeah. I start to bleed. And I'm like, Kostara, please forgive me. I have to go to the bathroom. And my nose just started bleeding absolutely everywhere. And it took probably a half an hour for me to get that under control. And by the time I came back, she was gone. And I found her in the experiencers meeting after that. And that's when we each told our stories, and it was rather incredible.
And have you done that interview now?
No, it's a week from today, actually.
Well, I'm going to have to make sure I listen to that. That's on Aquarius Radio, isn't it?
No, that's actually on my radio station, which is Quantum Hologram Matrix on sbunetwork.com or Spreaker.com. If you go to Spreaker.com or sbunetwork.com,
cool.
Punch in Quantum Hologram Matrix, and that's where you'll be able to hear the show. But anyway, I wanted to do the show with her today, but she was like, it's too soon, and she's much older. She just said, I just need time to regroup and gather my thoughts and work out talking points for her. And I'm like, that's completely understandable. Plus, we'll do a better show if we wait. And I can prepare more and study more.
Yeah, really actually get a chance to get to grips with the information she's given you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we could have done the show today, and it would have been a good show no matter what, just because she's such a dynamic speaker. Mm-hmm. But I think waiting until a week from today is even better.
Everything happens when it's supposed to. That's one thing I have learned through life.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And the phrase you can use is in God's good timing. So in God's good timing, we'll conduct the show, and her message must be incredibly profound. According to her, it will affect the future of the human race. Also, one thing that I believe is coming is disclosure will happen in my lifetime, if not within the next 3 to 5 years. And we cannot have enlightenment without disclosure. And we cannot have disclosure until we can wrap our heads around the concept that we've been worshiping extraterrestrials instead of God. And that's a hard concept. It's the hardest curve to defeat. And it took me years to defeat it myself. But years removed, of course, it's part of my doctrine now and something that I try to explain and teach to people.
How do you think the mainstream are going to take that? Because that, like you said, you had trouble coming to terms with that, and you've had experiences. But the mainstream, who are generally very, and I dread to say this, but quite close-minded, How do you think that's going to go down? Do you think it's going to have the panic effect that the governments think it will?
It definitely could. It could. It's really hard to tell, but I think that that they're buttering us up for it. You know, for example, a couple movies that came out, Arrival. I don't know if you saw Arrival. Arrival came out, and that's kind of weaning us into the whole concept of extraterrestrials. And then another movie that came out was called Passengers. These are both really good movies. And a few years ago was a movie called Jupiter Ascending. Mm-hmm. And I believe that these movies, I don't know if you've seen any of them, but I believe that these movies are slowly ushering in soft disclosure. And within the next 3 to 5 years, I believe we're going to have full-on disclosure. And one thing I think that a lot of people are getting wrong is experiencers will say that we are the ones that are going to usher in disclosure. And I don't believe that. I believe that the ETs are going to usher in disclosure. And I think it's going to, because our governments will go out of their way forever to cover it up. They don't want to lose the control. They don't want to lose the control of the church over the people. They don't want to lose the power. So they're going to do everything in their power to suppress this knowledge and information. I believe what's going to happen, you remember the movie Independence Day? Yes. Where the huge motherships just basically parked over major cities all around the world. I believe that that's going to happen. But there's been more and more UFO sightings left and right. Most recently, in Chile, the Chilean Air Force was doing an air show. You know, nothing unusual. You know, our Air Force does air shows all throughout the United States. Well, they were doing one in Chile, and there was clearly a UFO flying right by these jets, right as they're doing, doing their air show, and it was captured by thousands and thousands of people on video. These kind of things are happening all the time. Something like that happened in Belgium recently. Things like this have been happening all through Meso and South America, more so than they actually happen here in the United States. These things are happening all over the country and all over the world. The clip and the amount of these kind of encounters is going up and up and up and up and up, and eventually it's just going to be so undeniable that our government won't be able to deny it anymore.
I think, though, that if they do come in Independence Day styly, I think that could cause quite a panic, to be fair.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I agree completely. I just don't see Trump going on Fox News here in the States and go, okay, UFOs and extraterrestrials are real. I don't see that happening.
No.
I don't see it. I don't see Queen Elizabeth doing it either. I don't see any of our world leaders doing it.
No, that's true.
Although it's interesting, Prime Minister Medvedev of the Soviet Union about 4 years ago, he thought he was off camera, but he was still being recorded. And he's talking to the reporter about how many human alien hybrids that there are in the Soviet Union. And she's laughing at him the whole time he's telling this story. And he's just as serious as he can be. He was not joking at all. And she asked him how many. And he said, if I told you the amount of human alien hybrids on this planet, it would create shockwaves. So I'm not going to tell you how many there are. Sun Shi Li used to work for the Chinese government in China, mm-hmm. and now he has his own UFO organization, and he said the exact same thing about how many human alien hybrids that there are in China alone. So now you got to think, these human alien hybrids, they can look Chinese, they can look Russian, they can look black, they can look white, they can look Hispanic, they can look Hindu, they can take on and fashion any look and or nationality that they want to blend in with we indigenous here on this planet. So, and also, I also say that, we already have experienced disclosure in different parts of the world. We just don't realize it. There's 1.3 billion people in India. About 1 billion of them are Hindus. Hindus clearly know and acknowledge and understand that Krishna, Vishnu, Shiva, Namagiri, etc., their gods are star people. They openly understand that. So if there's 7 billion people on the earth, about 1 billion, only Hindus, but 1 billion understand that they are worshiping extraterrestrials. The Aboriginals in Australia, they number about 750,000. Their god is Boyami. Boyami comes here from the Mirabuka. What's the Mirabuka? It's the Milky Way. They know that their star elder is an extraterrestrial. I ran into Clifford Mahudi, a Zuni elder, at the UFO conference, at the UFO Congress. And all these American Indians, especially in the desert Southwest, they know and understand that they came from the star people. This is interesting. Chase Kletschke, who's on the A team with MUFON, went to Peru a number of years ago, and the mayor of this small city approached her and asked her to ask the extraterrestrials to quit taking their water. For whatever reason, UFOs would go to different parts of Peru and take their water for whatever reason, and it was starting to create problems. They needed water for all the obvious reasons. So their livestock was dying. Children didn't have water. Nobody had water. And this mayor of the city asked Chase Kletschke to make them stop. And she's like, you don't understand. I'm just a MUFON investigator. I can't tell the ETs to do anything. And it surprised him when she communicated with him that in the United States, this is esoteric knowledge, but in different parts of the world, it is common knowledge that extraterrestrials have always been visiting our planet. So we've achieved disclosure more than we actually think that we have.
Well, you never know. People might be a lot more open-minded when full disclosure happens than we give people credit for.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. And I think all these are subtle steps to get us conditioned to receive this information, which will definitely change the course of human history. But it is also necessary for us to evolve and move into the fourth dimension. I believe that a key part of disclosure is so that this planet and we Earthlings on this planet can move forward and ascend upward to a higher dimension, that being the fourth dimension. But it all begins with disclosure. And then after disclosure does occur, it's not going to be an easy fix. It will take a number of years for everything to get sorted out, but it will end up being incredibly positive. And then, only then, can we achieve enlightenment. But we have to achieve enlightenment together.
I totally agree with that point. We can only do it together as one. See, more concepts that you've thrown out onto the table for people to get their head around, John. It's fascinating talking to you.
Well, that's what I do. I like to find out where the line is, and then I like to cross it. So wherever the line is, and I cross it with respect to everybody, and I don't expect everybody to believe or understand what I'm talking about, but that's why I encourage people to contact me, and let's talk about it. That's step one.
Yeah, let's keep, start talking about it and do it openly. And then, like you say, you're surprised at the amount of people that have had encounters or, have had experiences or have seen something they can't explain in the skies. It's just probably a lot wider spread than even you're aware of, because people just don't talk about it generally, because, the media, people tend to deal with it with ridicule and skepticism.
Yeah, you actually alluded to my next point, is that perhaps millions and millions of people, throughout this country, but really across the world, have had an encounter and just are afraid to talk about it. They're afraid to talk about it because of their employment. They're afraid to talk about it because of repercussions from their family and friends. And there's actual fear involved in sharing these kind of experiences. And I respect anybody that does not want to talk about it. It does help to talk about it. There's different forums where you can communicate with others that are going through the same thing. I have a number of people communicate with me, and we have our own private conversations on the phone. And I'm not a counselor. I just talk to them about it. And it does help. It absolutely helps to talk about it. But if somebody wants to sit on the information and not talk about it, I will forever respect them for doing so.
And that's the best way to be. That's definitely the best way to be. Now, we've only got roughly about 12 minutes left of the show, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about your other side of things that you do, because we touched on it right at the beginning, and that was your mediumistic abilities and your healer abilities.
Yes. Hey, can you give me 3 minutes, and I'll be right back. I need to take a quick break. I'll be right back.
I'll take a break myself.
Hello, this is Kerry Ann. Please join me every Thursday at 9 p.m. on 7th Sanctum, only on Parasearch UK Radio.
Hello, join me, Paul Rook, every Tuesday at 9 p.m. for the Trident Paranormal Show, with interviews, news and reviews from this galaxy and beyond, only on Parasearch UK Radio.
You're listening to Parasearch UK Radio, news, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio.
Welcome back. Now, before the break, we were talking all about the alien aspects and many, many different concepts. But I'd like to talk to our guest, the Reverend John Polk, a little bit more about his mediumistic and healing abilities, because this is another side that's completely fascinating to me. So, John, when did you first start realising that you had these mediumistic abilities?
When I was a child. It started when I was 5 years old, really. My mom would do the Ouija board with me. Now, I'm not a proponent of the Ouija board. I refer to them as a witch board. However, I do know some psychic mediums that are more gifted than I am, who use them and swear by them. So I'm not going to tell anybody not to use them. I just personally don't use them myself. Plus, I don't like using crutches. I don't like using cards. I like for these things to manifest without a crutch or a tool. But if anybody uses cards and if they're accurate, if anybody uses the Ouija board and they're accurate, then, I mean, how can I criticize them? So I'm not going to. But just for me personally, I don't do it. Mm-hmm. But anyway, it started when I was 5 years old, and then right around 12 years old, I started to basically see ghosts, and it has just increased exponentially as I've gotten older, and I'm 47 now, and it's just steadily increased my whole life. And then my house is built on an Indian reservation. It's totally haunted. It's not a negative thing. It's basically Native American Indians that used to live here hundreds of years ago. And then also, my house serves as a portal, basically a conduit from this dimension into other dimensional realms. And it's very common for earthbounders, in other words, a soul that is stuck in between dimensions or is too dense to move to the light. They will come to me. They will come to me and ask me to help them cross over. And I can do that. And I can do it with the help of my home, which, like I said, is a vortex. Now, here's an interesting story. I was at a wake a few years ago. Somebody close to me passed away out of nowhere at 68 years old. Just, went to the doctor a few months prior, clean bill of health. A couple months later, died out of nowhere. Before that, his parents had both died. So I'm at the wake, and he was an icon in the business community and a pillar of stability in his church. So we're at this funeral home. We're at the wake. The funeral is going to be the next day, and it's open casket. And I can see him above his casket, which is very common. Right after somebody passes, they often will stay around the body for a number of days before they start to ascend. Sometimes they don't even realize they're dead. Sometimes it takes a few days for them to start to really understand that they're dead. But there were so many people that were there to pay pay their last condolences to the family. And he's above his casket, and I can see him smiling. It made him happy that so many people, there must have been 300 or 400 people that showed up to pay their respects. And so at one point I'm like, I need to get away from all these people. I went and sat in one of the pews where I could see his face with the open casket. I wanted to see if I could communicate with him. So I see him over his own casket, and he says, I have to tell you something. And I'm like, please, I'm here, I'm all ears. But there were so many other people, and I was hearing their thoughts also. So I'm like, let's wait, do it tomorrow or something when I'm not around all these people, because there's too much noise in the channel. So the next morning, I wake up in my hotel room bed, and there he is. And he says, I feel so stupid. And I'm like, why do you feel stupid? And he said, because I'd been praying to extraterrestrials my whole life, and I didn't even know it. And then I say to him, I don't want you to feel stupid. God is to us what we want God to be. So if God is a loving, benevolent, all-seeing, all-knowing, omnipotent presence in your life, and every Christian conveniently forgets about the Old Testament Yahweh that killed everybody. But that's another book, and that's another story in itself. Mm-hmm. I said, God is whatever you want God to be. So if God is a loving, benevolent, omnipotent being, creator, then you're not wrong for having God in your life and loving God, even though what you thought was God was actually an extraterrestrial. So get this, his parents were waiting on the other side for him to escort him away from Yahweh's false version of heaven so that he could go straight to the Godlight. And when I'm sitting there receiving all this, laying in my bed in a hotel room, and it was just blowing my absolute mind. But that happened a couple years ago. So you wanted to talk about mediumship. That fits right into mediumship.
And it certainly fits into what you were talking about with the collective consciousness and the praying to the gods and stuff like that. So that's quite a good story, really. Fits in right nicely.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I wrote about it in my books, they are what they are. But also I write about my UFO sightings. I write about my abductions. I write about my mediumship. I write about ghost stories. I write about extraterrestrials in my home. I write about drones chasing UFOs around my house. I write about all kinds of stuff. So it's not just the stories at hand. I go into what you could call my experiencer diaries in each of those books. Which
is absolutely fascinating. I literally can't wait to start reading your books. I only received them yesterday, so I'm literally, when we finish the interview, I'm going to go and start reading your books. Thank you again for so much for sending them to me. I'm absolutely thrilled about that. Now, last time I spoke to you, we were talking a little bit about the Titanic exhibition you had an experience at. Mm-hmm. Would you tell us about that again? Because I love that story.
Yeah, there's a lot to the story, but I'm a DJ in Orlando, Florida, and a friend of mine said, hey, I got a gig for you. I can't cover it myself, and don't let this chase you off, but it's all psychic mediums. And I'm like, oh, that's perfect. So my function at this gig was just to play background music, so I did, and I came up with a formula that seemed to work. Just played what I felt would work, and it worked. And so after the gig, this lady and her friend, they approached me, and I'll leave them nameless, but one of them was the ghost tour guide at the Titanic exhibition, and the other lady was her best friend, and they lived together. So she said, if you want to go to the Titanic exhibition ghost tour, I'll give you a free ticket if you want to go. So I couldn't, I don't have a whole lot of friends that I can talk to about this stuff. So I ended up going by myself. And I buddy up with this guy and his girlfriend. And they got this really cool, expensive digital camera. And this is, over 10 years ago. So it was not a long time ago, but it wasn't recent. Anyway, they're wanting, this couple with this camera, they're wanting to take pictures of anything and everything that they can. So one of the first rooms that we enter, we see a picture of one of the not the captain of the ship, but somebody higher up in the ranks of the ship. Okay, and this particular individual, I forget his name, he ordered a number of the lifeboats to be removed from the promenade deck because they were going to be doing a huge ball or gala, and the boats were just simply in the way of the party. So they removed those lifeboats, having no idea that they needed every single one of them because they were going to wreck in the middle of the Atlantic into an iceberg. Mm-hmm. And so he blamed himself for killing all those people. I mean, he personally blamed himself, and he was stuck as an earthbounder in between dimensions. He was too dense to move to the light, so he was stuck, and he haunted that part of the Titanic exhibition. So the ghost tour guide says, can anybody see anything? And when you can see ghosts, the first thing that you have to do is figure out which ones are yours, because I have perhaps even legions of them follow me everywhere I go. So if I'm out ghost hunting, the first thing I have to do is make sure that I'm not seeing one of my own entities that follows me around. So I discerned which ones were mine and which ones were not, and then there was one right over the picture, and it was clear that that was not mine. So this guy and his girlfriend, they take a picture of it, and the ghost tour guide sees us taking a picture because I had pointed. I'm like, she said, can anybody see anything? I figure out which ones are mine, which ones are not, and the one over his picture, you could clearly see an orb just as clear as day over it, not with the human naked eye, although I could see it, but in the camera shot, you could see it. So she stops everybody and goes, hey, everybody, look at this picture. And just as clear as day, you could see an orb in that picture. And then, so we go further into the tour and exhibition, which was really cool. I mean, you know, it was half ghost tour, but it was also educational as to the Titanic itself. And we get to a certain part, and she stops everybody and says, now, I want you to stop and think for a second. If you had your shirt tucked in, think about it. You either did or you didn't. But if you had a shirt tucked in, is it still tucked in? And almost everybody that had their shirt tucked in, their shirts were untucked. And she said, there's this little child spirit that likes to mess with people. He's you know, he's kind of a trickster, but he's benevolent. He's a kid. He's trapped in dimensions. He likes to play. And everyone who had their shirt untucked, not one of them felt it. And she said, this happens every single tour that we do. And there was a bunch of anomalous kind of activities that happened like that. But after the exhibition, I told her and her friend, I'm like, can you help me? I've got an entity stuck to me, and I basically need an exorcism of me done and of my house. So they come to my house, and I know we don't have a whole lot of time left, so I'll try and make it quick. How much time do we have left?
Probably about 5 minutes.
Okay, I'll make it quick. So, her and her friend come to my house. She has a dream catcher. She lays it on the couch, and there's no way that this thing could fall on the floor the way she laid it against the couch. She said, let's meditate. We hold hands. We start to meditate. She goes and does a guided meditation, and within a minute, the dream catcher falls on the floor. And I'm like, whoa, we all open our eyes. What was going on? She said, I see your guardian protector. His name is White Wolf. And as he walked in the room from your hallway, he's got this pack of baby wolves that follow him everywhere. And they're the ones that knock the dreamcatcher staff on the floor. So then we go back into meditation, and she finds what she terms as a succubus on me named Elizabeth. And Elizabeth, what I believe is that she and I were in love in a past lifetime, and that I abused her, perhaps even sexually. I'm not sure. I just know that I was not good to her. So as my punishment, if you will, for this lifetime, she's my succubus, and she follows me everywhere I go. So the medium finds her, locates her, tells her that if you don't go to the light, one day John will die. And he will come back, and you'll still be stuck as an earthbounder. And he'll be able to see you, but you won't be able to see him. So please, let me take you to the light. And her name is Elizabeth. She was fighting against this with everything in her. And the medium got scared and came out of the trance. She got literally scared and came out of the trance. So her friend says, I need to use the restroom. She goes, use the restroom. And when she comes back out of the restroom, she falls on the floor gasping for air. And the next thing you know, she's in the hospital. And the medium, I call her a couple days later. They didn't answer their phone at all. A couple days later, I finally get in touch with her, and she said that Elizabeth was literally strangling her in my home and literally strangling her in the hospital. And then this gallant warrior named White Wolf, my guardian protector, literally saved her life and stopped this succubus from actually killing this woman. So just to give you an idea of how powerful the spirit world can be in the physical world, it can be incredibly alarming and scary.
I agree. I've had smaller experiences than that, but it can be terrifying, the power that they can wield when they want to.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then a couple days after that, I never spoke to them again. I don't blame them. They were afraid of what happened. They were afraid of me. Not necessarily me, but they were afraid of this succubus.
Yeah, this entity that you've got with you. But she's not violent to you, is she? Or to your girlfriend? No,
she only allows certain women especially to get close to me. And my current girlfriend, she likes her. And
well,
this
that's
is
good.
Weird. This is weird, Kerry, is when we're intimate, my girlfriend and I, she literally enters my girlfriend. And that is something that ghosts can do. It's not difficult for them to do it at all. And she relives the beautiful relationship that we had in a couple past lifetimes ago before I started to abuse her.
Mm. That's quite tragic.
It is, and I can't be positive that I was abusing her in a past lifetime, but that's what I've received, and I'm pretty convinced that I'm right about it. You know, God forbid that I did something like that to another human being, but I tend to think that that's what happened and why she follows me.
Do you think she will ever move on before you do?
Not willingly, no. And one thing I have learned by being a Reiki Master, by becoming a Reiki Master, by becoming an ordained minister in metaphysics, she has less of a grip on me now than she ever has before. As I evolve spiritually, she loses that power over me that she definitely had years ago.
Mm-hmm. Maybe she will. Maybe she will move naturally. But let's hope so.
Well, and this is strange, but I love her. You know, when I can feel her attack people close to me sometimes, I can feel her creating nefarious situations that I have to deal with. And instead of, you don't fight hate with hate, you fight hate with love.
Mm-hmm.
You know, kill them with kindness. Send them light, you know. Send them light instead of, you know, lowering myself to that lower dimension and getting angry. It doesn't help anything. It just makes everything worse.
It certainly does. Well, on that note, I'm really sorry we've run out of time. Thank you so much for talking to me today.
Absolutely, Kerry. I'm glad that we were able to catch up and do another show together.
Yeah, it's been great. And I'm sure that we're going to have another interview at some point together, or a catch up, definitely. Because, as I say, the information and the concepts you bring are absolutely fascinating. So thank you again. It's been absolutely brilliant.
Well, thank you very much. And yes, we will do it again soon.
Very much so. Thank you. And on that note, good night, everybody.
You're listening to Parasearch UK Radio. News, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio.